because we're going to get feedback. Okay, how about now? I think we're okay, Coach. So, welcome to the Power of Now. I'm Coach Mitchell.
I'm Coach Darren.
And together we are
MD
Coaching and Consulting. We're going to get that right. There we go. Okay, so good. I believe our volume is good to go. So, as I was saying, we're going to talk tonight about food choices. But tonight, before we get into food choices, we're going to sort of recap a little bit of the discussion from last week on food insecurities and food deserts. And tonight, our primary focus is going to be on food choices. And you might think that they're all the same, but they each have some unique differences. And that's why we have three separate categories. And the breadth of the topic is so broad. And of course, we won't be able to hit every issue that's plaguing not just our community, but the world, and specifically this country being as rich of a country as it is. We are in, dire straits when it comes to food insecurities, with such a high percentage of households with children that go hungry every day. And I believe last week it was over 70%.
Now, in terms of numbers, we were at, I think, 34 million people.
34 million people, right, with 13%. 13% of our population goes hungry every day.
Yeah, it was actually 13.5 million households. So
Yeah.
we were at 34 million and 13.5 million households.
Right, and that is a nation that actually the impact from health.gov is 13% of American households go hungry.
Okay.
Go hungry. So again, food insecurities and food deserts actually are being impacted even more. And I don't want to talk politics, but I want to talk about how the government is driving policy, and one side of the government is driving policy to reduce assistance for over 20 million households in this country. And during COVID, when benefits were raised to help meet the demand of, people that did not have access to financial access, economic access, because they were losing jobs or getting laid off because of COVID, over 20 million households were impacted. So the benefits, what we know as what they call SNAP, which is the old food stamp program, was increased to help people make it through the pandemic. So now there has been legislation to reduce the benefits, to roll back that augmented or supplemental benefit from COVID, and also raise the minimum age for individuals who receive SNAP benefits to require them to work. And it was for individuals 18 to 45 years of age, they had to actually meet a 20-hour work week in order to continue on their SNAP benefits. Now it's being proposed that minimum age be raised to 40, from 18 to 50. And anyone who is up to age 50 would have to work 20 hours per week in order to continue to receive whatever amount of benefits that they receive now from the SNAP program. And 13% of individuals that receive SNAP benefits in this country are individuals that are 18 to 50 years old. And according to the US Department of Agriculture, a quarter of them earn money from working. And what I found interesting about the proposed bill was some of the language in the bill that, there are 11 million jobs available in this country. So those 13% should be able to work an additional 20 hours per week. And it's easy to find a job. And this is the language. It's not legalese. It's in layman's terms that there are 11 million open jobs and plenty of opportunities for recipients to escape poverty. Now, if you know, like I know, most of those 11 million jobs are probably paying minimum wage and or on the higher end require a specific skill set that some of these people may not have and don't have the opportunity to get because you need a special trade. And in order to get that, you have to go to school. And trade school at a minimum is $17,000 per year. So therein lies some of the complexities at a very high level of food insecurities in this country and how it impacts just your everyday average American.
That particular requirement is so like the government and so like people who are disengaged from or disconnected from the issue. You know how people who are homeless, which is something else I just want to throw in there, and I'll get that in a second, but you know how people who are homeless could not get services because they didn't have an address?
Right.
Okay, it's like the same thing. The assumption is that those people receiving benefits, those 13%, as to what you allude to, that their skill level matches up with the 11 million jobs. That is like the farthest thing from like how do you yes.
And not only that, your skill set is just one thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one element that you bring to the table, right? When you say, well, you can go get a job, but there are other factors that come into play when we talk about just getting a job, access maybe to computers. Maybe you don't have an internet, resume writing, because most jobs, most organizations or companies, they want a resume versus an application.
Right.
And those that have the app, want you to go through the application process, the application has to be done online. So now that presents another issue logistically. If you have to leave your home and maybe go to the library to use their computer, and what happens if you are not computer savvy? Just basic. Just the basic log in and access a company's website. And then we're talking about individuals who may be returning citizens. That adds another level of complexity. So, you have parents that, may not be able to go out and get another job because they have kids that they have to parent.
Right.
So you have so many different factors that play into why individuals are not working or may not be able to work, may want to work, but can't work because there's so many barriers to obtaining employment. And they're minimizing what those barriers are to certain communities and people.
The other thing besides access to computer is
hi John, thanks for joining.
The location of jobs versus those who are seeking. So there's just a lot of little nuances in there that you can't just make a blanket. There's a blanket assumption that should not be made.
Right.
Now, on those numbers, that when we talk about the food insecurities and food deserts may apply, but the insecurities, I don't know if those numbers actually include homeless people because they talk about households. Well, that doesn't fall under homeless. And if anyone's, if you're not aware, homelessness in major cities is becoming a real problem, especially on the West Coast, and it's a problem that's impacting the business community because it's gotten out of hand. So you have one problem on top of another that needs to be addressed, which goes to my point as I was having a discussion with some other people this week, is that we can not turn away in assuming it doesn't impact us. Because when they talked about this couple who were, business owners, small business owners, and they were describing all the things that they had to go through just to get into their business.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking to, close it. And they were actually employing a couple people from the homeless community to try to give them a chance to, say a hand
an
up.
Opportunity.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
but they're at a point, they've had this business for, I think, 37 years.
Yep.
And they're just wondering, like, we can't do this anymore.
Right. And it was just incredible the things that they had to do just to make it to the front door.
Yes.
To open up the establishment because of the homeless population.
Yes.
In the area, and being afraid and fearful for their lives. I just want to go back and correct my numbers. The number, as far as age is concerned, for able-bodied adults that is being proposed to expand, the definition in the legislation is anyone that is without dependents between the ages of 50 and their early 60s. Now, early 60s can mean all the way up to 64 and a half, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're proposing that people go out and work. And if they don't work and meet that minimum requirement, their benefits will be reduced. Now, I don't know about anyone who's listening, but I'm going to be transparent. I have known and I know individuals who receive SNAP benefits. I know a single mom who gets $25 a month.
Wow.
In SNAP benefits. If she didn't work, she wouldn't be able to eat. So what are they cutting?
Right.
And the audacity to minimize how people are struggling in this country just to eat. And if this young lady didn't have a support system, I can't fathom how her and her child would be impacted. And that's just one. But look at the laws of probability of the individuals that may fall into that same category.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not heightened aware, because we have to be really aware of what's going on in these areas, in these systems, in order to help change the structure. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Like I said, it appears to just be another ridiculous governmental approach to solving a problem. And again, I get the concept of wanting people to work, all right? But again, did you drill down to put things in place to ensure people had the means, to work? And that's the part that there's always that gap where you're mandating something, but you're not looking at all the downstream effects.
Correct.
Or the things that need to be put into place.
Correct. And in this bill, you don't see any solutions You just see the proposal.
Right.
You just see the proposal. And it's more or less a showdown. It's a face-off.
Mhm.
You either reduce benefits or we're not going to pass the budget, you know. So, it's worth keeping your ears to the ground and your eyes open,
Mhm.
because, and I don't want to make this political, but
Right.
the one thing that I think that we need to be aware of is that we need to be more proactive in making sure that as constituents, we have the best representation for our communities in Congress. So,
And it's just one thing, I just want to pose before we actually move to our, we have to, in my opinion, we have to stop voting on just the issue that means something to us, meaning us people individually. Mhm. You got to vote for things that are going to ensure that the environment of the country is right, because we're impacted by everything. And it's so easy, especially in a climate that's so, politicized and divisive, to automatically say things like, oh, those people just need to pull themselves by their bootstraps. Well, you know what I'm saying? If you don't have any boots, how can you pull yourself up by the bootstraps? So,
right.
and as we were just talking earlier, that couple, they aren't part of that population, but they're about to be impacted. The sale of their business, they said that, the price has dropped because when the realtor calls and he gets quotes, the people then come by, you know, and check out the area. And once they check out the area, say he never hears from them again. So these problems, impact us in so many different ways. So again, we talked last week about how, children who go to school hungry tend not to perform in school. You tend to end up having behavioral problems. Well, if you have behavioral problems, what does that eventually lead to? Them putting in heavy duty security equipment in the school. Major city in New Jersey had the highest school budget, but most of that budget went to what? Security systems.
So we go from food insecurities to school
Security,
security,
yes,
which makes absolutely the worst learning environment possible.
yes.
Because you don't feel safe.
Mm-mm. So
You're on high alert.
Mm.
You're hungry and on high alert.
yes.
But go ahead, Coach.
Yes. So, but tonight, so we want to talk about food choices, and many of these choices really they apply for a large, span of people. I would say, the only people that this may not apply for, if you have no budget, then these suggestions may not seem reasonable to you. So again, we're basing the assumption that people are able to have access to some food. Again, whether it's from uh, government subsidies, or if it's from, again, you're buying the food yourself. And then even those, if you aren't in that category, these are some suggestions that should help you also make better food choices. Because again, as I always say, it's all connected. You make poor food choices, what happens? You end up being unhealthy. If you are someone in your household, if you're being unhealthy, that means money in the household is going to what? Your health care. And we all know, when they look at the stats for people who became homeless, it was mental illness, drugs, and healthcare. So those are, like, I believe, the three top. So it's all connected. Everybody need to understand that. That's why you need to take care of yourself to the best of your ability. And you start with what you put in your mouth. Your food choices is the fundamental aspect of your health. Now, there's there's an old cliche or old adage that when it comes to eating on a budget, they call it the three P's. And those three P's are plan, purchase, and prepare. I like to add a fourth P, which I call perception, because perception is part of the mindset. Mhm. And I think when you decide that I'm going to be more mindful of these decisions, you got to get in the right mindset, because if you haven't been doing this, you're probably used to just going in the store and just buying whatever you want. Uh, if money's not a problem, you just snatch stuff off the shelf. Wow, I'll take that, take that. And then you got to change that, because a lot of stuff that you're probably picking up probably isn't healthy. Mhm. And I've always say too, you got to determine how healthy you want to be, because there's a range, and that determines the habits that you do and what you eat.
Mhm.
But I think if you want to follow making proper food choices, regardless of where you fall on the economic spectrum, first thing I said, you want to address your mindset, and you want to change your perception of food. We all like to eat, so much so that we focus more on the enjoyment of food than on the health benefit. And I think there's a majority of people who don't even really think so much about the health benefit. They think about, I'm just enjoying a good meal. And don't get me wrong, those meals, they're nice to have. Those just where you just enjoy yourself, for the most part. But that's not the purpose of food. The purpose of food is to provide nourishment and information to our body, so that our body can maintain what is known as homeostasis. Basically, our body can remain nourished to maintain equilibrium throughout our entire body.
So, Coach, what makes you, in your opinion, make people not just make some, irresponsible choices in their eating, but the overeating, the act of overeating?
Okay, all right. You got a couple of reasons.
Mhm.
And here's the thing that where we are now, that they're realizing, like we normally would assume that people who are overweight, that's their problem. But there's some factors that go into play that impact us that really are outside of our control, and probably we're not even aware of. Like when I ask people, I say, do you know that companies have uh, positions known as craving consultants? Yeah, that's the proper title. Craving consultants. And you know what they do?
What's that?
They work to design the food so it becomes addictive. So when we talk about being intentional, about having awareness, these are the reasons why. Because you're being played. Because the food is designed to make sure it becomes addictive. You know how that old commercial, I can't just eat one?
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's a reason for that. It was designed so that, again, there's certain things that happen in our brain, like we get dopamine hits when we eat certain foods.
Triggers.
Yes, and we know dopamine hits, it's really it's natural. We have natural dopamine hits, but then we also have artificial ones, and certain foods will do that. And the dopamine is almost like a quick high.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you got pleasure foods.
Mm-hmm.
You sit there with your Haagen-Dazs ice cream, and it makes you feel better.
Well, no, I have to disagree with that. Haagen-Dazs tastes like eggs.
Okay, well, you disagree. Yes, you're
But I get it.
So that's part of it. The other thing too is that we've become, going back to my point, we become detached to what the purpose of food is. So we use it as a clutch, which also, a crutch. Yeah, to overeating is we're also satisfying emotional needs. We're satisfying gaps for boredom. You think about it, sometimes you're bored. What do? You go to the refrigerator.
Right.
Yeah, you go grab something to eat.
You eat for satisfaction. You eat for pleasure. You eat for emotional support.
Yes. Activity.
Right, exactly. So your faux pas wasn't really a faux pas because you eat in a clutch.
Yeah.
You use food as a crutch,
Yes.
but you eat it in a clutch sometimes too, and you make irrational decisions when you eat in a clutch.
Yes.
Because you're eating out of a hunger.
It's almost like an impulse.
Hunger. Eating, right.
And this is why it ties to having that awareness and being intentional, because that awareness, that mindful eating, will make you think, oh, let me think about what I'm doing. I'm picking up something. Am I really hungry? And we pretty much know that a lot of times we're not really hungry, we're thirsty. But we pick up food because we think we're hungry.
Mhm.
So you want to have that sense of awareness. And that's what I said, why you want to be intentional. And another part of the mindset too is you want to know why you're committing to this change. And you want your family to know, because if you're going from one style of eating based on your economics to a different one, well, you need to make those adjustments. And I think you need to have that discussion, or again, understanding why you're doing it. Or if you're doing it for purely health reasons, you tell everybody, uh, listen, we're going to make some changes here, and therefore we're going to change what foods we consume. And uh, one of my rules has always been, and I had to do this at
Mhm.
certain points, is don't bring it in the house, because we have this false courage or this false discipline. Oh, I'm gonna bring it in the house. I'm only gonna eat a little at a time. Well, some folks can do that. I know you can.
I can do that,
Yeah.
yes.
I cannot. You know what?
I can bring a snack in and then I'll have to throw it out because it'll sit for so long that it goes bad,
Right.
which is not a good thing.
No.
At all.
That's actually on the list too in terms of storage and food waste.
Ooh,
But
boy.
you want to again, be mindful of bringing things into the house. As I heard one chef say, she said, if you bring it in the house, it's gonna go in your mouth. All right. So don't do that. All right. Also, part of this change is having what I call preparation habits. When you start making proper food choices for either economics or health, one of the things you want to do is you have to learn how to cook. On some level, you have to learn how to cook. But did you have a question, Coach Mitchell?
I just had a comment on that point. We still tend to, we're still in food choices, but even when you're preparing meals at home, you still have to be in a certain mindset.
Oh, yeah.
Because your portion sizes matter.
Yes.
So if you're, cooking and you're eating a half a pot of spaghetti, you're still making the wrong choice.
Yes.
In the amount of food that you eat. So it's not just what you eat, it's the quantity that you're ingesting that really impacts our temple.
Yes,
right?
Because it's actually not just what you eat, it's also how you cook it. You can take something healthy, cook it the wrong way, and now it becomes unhealthy. And it doesn't usually work the other way around, though, like you take something unhealthy and then cook it a certain way and it become. Now, I don't think it goes that way, but you can definitely take something healthy and if you cook it, like say if you're frying something with the wrong kind of oils, especially, you can make it unhealthy.
And there's a difference between frying and sauteing.
Yes.
Because of the amount of fat, saturated fats that you may get from that.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, which we won't go into tonight, but there also is a difference from a health perspective, the type of oils you use. And we know, certain cultures, including our culture, tends to, again, you want to cook everything in, vegetable oil. And I don't know how many people grew up, which I'm sure we had this conversation, where people reuse their oil. You had the coffee can on the stove that had oil that had been used 2 or 3 times. I truly hope nobody still does that.
Well, it depends on what type of fat it is. Absolutely. I grew up with the coffee can or some vessel sitting in the middle of the stove that held the residual oil, and it was reused until it just couldn't be reused anymore.
Right.
and you would constantly add to it. So if you're frying, foods or making bacon, you're saving those drippings
Mm-hmm.
for another use. And I'm sure it wasn't just because um, they liked the oil that they were using. It was because of economics.
Yes,
It,
yep.
it was a savings factor, a cost factor. So I think if we're still doing it today, it's out of habit from what we've been taught coming up. So we've brought those characteristics into our space today because it's not necessary.
Right.
And you really shouldn't be reusing any oil
No.
that you've cooked in.
Especially there's certain oils that are unhealthy to start with. You definitely want to reuse them.
Right.
Because basically some oils will spoil if they're used at high temperatures, which makes them really unhealthy when it gets in your body. But here's again just some other preparation tips and habits is before you go shopping, you want to check your refrigerator and your cabinets. You want to check to see what you actually need because going to the store without that list, you tend to overspend and you tend to pick up things that you do not need.
Mm-hmm.
And that's proving, making that list, it saves you money and you tend to make healthier choices. Why? Because when you sit down with the list, you're thinking, here's the things that my intention. This is my intention. So when you look at the list, you'll be reminded of what your intentions were. Mm-hmm. And it helps to reduce the possibility that you just grab things as you see. Mm-hmm. There's also something that you want to get into the habit that will also save you money is learn to shop your refrigerator. Mm-hmm. Because again, shopping your refrigerator, you may have a combination of fresh food and leftovers that will end up spoiling. Why? Because it gets pushed to the back of the refrigerator. And most times we go in the refrigerator, we look to see what's right in front of us,
Mm-hmm.
which is the other habit, would be always put your healthier stuff in the front because that's what we tend to grab. And that's part of a bigger picture of creating the right environment for yourself.
Right. And in shopping the refrigerator, you can make an amazing pot of soup on a cold, rainy day or a rainy day or a day that you're just indoors. And you'd be surprised at not only how delicious it can be, just, I call it the refrigerator pot of soup, refrigerator soup, but all leftover vegetables that are on the verge, vegetables that may be a week or two over the verge, make an amazing pot of vegetable soup and vegetable stock for later use because you can put it in a container and you can freeze it. And it is really a quick, simple, satisfying meal with just a couple of spices to season it. And you'd be surprised at how satisfying it is. And it goes a long way.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So here's again just some additional tips and suggestions. Naturally, you want to look for sales. You want to look for coupons. If you can, I would say get as many supermarket cards as you can. Mm-hmm. Because some places don't do paper coupons anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If you know someone that has a Costco or someone BJ's or was it Sam's?
You got Sam's Club, BJ's, Costco.
If you can't afford one, see if you know somebody who has one and maybe ask if they can pick up some things for you or make some kind of arrangement so that you can buy certain items in larger quantity, which will save you the time of having to go to the store as well as possibly save you money per item.
Right.
Other thing is, when I mentioned about you want to learn how to cook. Mhm. And cooking is something that develops over time. So got to be okay with just starting someplace. At least be able to boil something. Mhm. You want to start actually looking for recipes. Mhm. And you can find them all over the internet. You know, we've come a long way from the days where I remember my mother joined some recipe club and she had the little index card box with all the recipes in it, you know.
That was Better Homes and Gardens.
Something like that. You know, now you can just get, off the recipe. You can even Google if you got certain, ingredients. You could do a Google search and just type in those ingredients, and you'll find recipes that you can start with.
Right. And I think one other important thing to do when you're doing your research is look for those recipes that are going to provide not just a tasty meal, but meals that will actually help you feel full.
Mhm.
Maybe drinking a cup of tea or, something warm with your meal so that you're feeling full and not overeating
Yes.
and overindulging in a sitting. So,
Now, one of the ways of doing a meal that will make you feel full and will last longer is having a meal with fiber.
hi, Demetrius. Thanks for joining.
Mm. A fiber-rich, meal will make you feel fuller longer.
Right. So, you want to just make sure you're balancing
Mhm.
your ingredients and what you have on your plate, really.
Yes. Mm.
And, also, the supermarkets have nutritionists that do monthly or quarterly sessions on, how to really eat nutritiously at affordable costs.
Mhm.
And they teach you how to prepare your plate.
Yes.
Because I don't think there's any shame in learning, regardless of where you are, at what stage you are in your life, in learning how to do something new and unlearning the bad habits that we've just accumulated over the years.
Yes. Yeah. Again, just connecting a couple things. You speak of nutritionists. We had nutritionists from Giant Food for the last couple of years do virtual sessions for us. They will be coming back again, as well as the sessions that we do. So you want to factor that in. Coach, what you mentioned about learning something new. Well, here's the other benefit of that. Learning something new keeps your brain healthy. Mhm.
So healthy all around.
Yeah, so just by learning how to be healthy, learning how to cook helps keep your brain healthy. Uh, and cooking also is a means for being creative, which also helps your brain. So again, I repeat this over and over, it's all connected. Mhm.
Yep.
The other thing too, actually, you kind of touched on this, but is you want to learn how to manage, be real intentional about managing your food waste. Again, we as Americans, we waste enough food per year
Ooh.
to feed some crazy number. It might be 2 billion people. Because on average, we waste about a pound per person per day of food. So how do you do that? Well, you learn how to properly store your food. You shop your refrigerator. You rotate the items. And one of the things that I would also recommend is learn how to upcycle your food. Now, most people are familiar with recycle. You might have heard me mention upcycle before, but what is upcycle? It's taking what would be known as scraps and utilizing them for another meal. Now, some people might go, oh, I'm not going to do that. Well, all right. But there's no shame in saving money. And again, you're saving the environment and you will probably end up eating healthy. Again, classic example. Coach Mitchell talked about making broth. Well, several years ago, I learned, all those scraps from your vegetables that you make for your primary meal, you should toss those scraps out. Now, what do? We do two things. Hmm? We either save those scraps in the refrigerator, put them in a Ziploc bag, save them. When they get to a certain point, you make your broth,
Mhm.
or we plant them.
We plant them. We
Huh?
plant them.
So either way, you're reusing, yeah, or you say reusing, using, upcycling. Yeah.
But either way, you're actually hitting a couple of pillars, right?
Mhm.
Not just your creativity, but when you actually plant something and you watch it grow and you nourish it to
Mhm.
until it produces, the gratifying feeling that you get. You say dopamine when you're
Yeah.
eating,
Mhm.
you're eating for a high, but you can definitely create for a high
Oh yeah,
because it
absolutely.
really makes you feel like not only have you contributed, but you created that. That's
Yes.
something that you did with your own hands.
Mhm.
And when you're able to do that, you're able to not only teach someone else, but you're more than happy to share with others
Yes.
what you've accomplished, right? And I just want to get the numbers on food waste in America. 119 billion pounds of food, 119 billion pounds of food each year is
Unbelievable.
wasted.
Mhm.
And that equates to 130 billion meals and more than $408 billion in food thrown away each year.
Wow. And again, going back to my point, I keep trying to drill the connection. Food waste is the number one contributor to climate change, and it's a reason for that. And not going into the details, but food waste is one of the biggest things that contributes to climate change. So environmentally, if you can reuse the food, if you happen to be able to grow your garden, well, some of those food scraps can be reused, can be returned to nature to be reused for your garden.
Right, you can compost, not just throw food out in the yard, but there's a specific way to do it, and that's another segment for another day. But
Yes.
I think one of the things that as Americans we do is we overshop.
Mhm.
A lot of countries, they shop on a daily basis.
Mhm.
They go to the supermarket and they buy their veggies, they buy their meats, or they grow their veggies and they go to the butcher or the market to buy their meats for that day and or just that week
Right.
or a couple of days.
Yes.
A couple of days. We go and we shop for in perpetuity.
Yeah.
You know?
We want to try to cover
We want to
a
stock
week, 2 weeks. Yes.
So I think that contributes to, one, our overeating,
Mhm.
and two, our choices, and what we choose to ingest on a daily
Yep.
basis,
Mhm.
and our overindulgence.
Yes. Because I think the reason why people do that because I think the intent was to try to get as fresh food as possible. So again, going every day with the assumption that you were going to have access to especially produce.
Mm-hmm.
So again, another tip suggestion, as mentioned earlier, you want to know how to properly store your food. You know, people sometimes would put things in your refrigerator that's not properly wrapped, not in a proper storage container, put it in a bowl with something over it. Well, pretty much know that's probably not going to last long. So you want to kind of make sure you're storing your foods properly. And there's even, and I'll be honest with you, something that I probably learned a few years ago, was really looking at, your bins on your refrigerator, and you usually have things on the side that has like a gauge, a scale, that adjusting those, and they're different whether you're storing vegetables versus fruit. You might want to look at that in your refrigerator. If this is something, new to me, well, it's like finding out about that your gas tank, that little arrow. We're pointing to which side your gas tank is on. But it was something that I, never really gave it much thought. And then one day I was like, oh, let me look this up, and then realized it sets the humidity,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps to keep your vegetables and fruits longer, and even know which vegetables should be in the refrigerator versus which ones should stay out
Right.
on the counter. Now, when you get just one thing, you got to learn to be adaptable too. So again, if this is a shift for you, you got to again open up your mind and be willing to be flexible. Then when you get to the store, there's a certain strategy to how you shop.
Strategy, technique.
Yes.
There is a technique to shopping.
Uh-huh. And pretty much no, they will always say shop the outer aisles. That's where all your whole foods are.
But I got one better before you
Yes.
get to the supermarket. If you're hungry, drink 8 to 16 ounces of water before you go to the supermarket.
Yes.
Because that'll stave off the hunger and it will, trust me, tamper out impulse buying.
Yes. So drink the water, or they say even have a light snack.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, either or both, because it will reduce your hunger and then reduce the impulse buying. You want to go to for maybe they say on average, fill your cart up with half, have it half full with produce. And usually, if you walk in the store, the first section you'll probably hit is the produce section.
Mm-hmm.
In most supermarkets. Did I mention that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the other thing too: is avoid buying unhealthy items to appease your children. And this is one of the reasons why you want to have that conversation about the changes that are coming. Because this is something I can't stress enough,
Hey, good evening. Thanks for joining.
is that watching parents give their kids junk food, especially sugar, like we used to call them again the sugar water, because maybe they just don't realize it, but you don't want to buy things just to appease your children, because if you really love them, you don't want to set them up for unhealthiness later in their life.
Right, because those sugary drinks, not just the sugary drinks, but most sugary snacks, one, they're not made with the same ingredients that they were made when we were coming up. If you're of my generation, that's a fact. The processed sugars and the other processed ingredients that they add to foods now, it's setting the children up for chronic illnesses later on. So, you're buying that sugary drink to appease them today, you're setting them up for a lifetime of health issues tomorrow.
Mhm.
So, we want to be mindful about the choices that we make on behalf of our children as well. Because if the children are our future and we're killing them while they're young, I mean, we're doing a disservice.
Yes.
We're doing a disservice to the people and the lives that have been entrusted to us.
Yes. And just to add to that is diabetes amongst teenagers has been steadily on the rise. Diabetes was something that used to be known, this actually called, I think, adult diabetes is how they used to frame, because it usually happen, later in life. Well, now you have children as young as 12 and 13 already dealing with diabetes. Two reasons, again, the food, which lends to being overweight, and overweight tends to lead to diabetes. So you want to be an example for your children, and they may not like you at first, but guess what? At some point, we all didn't like our parents. We got over it.
They'll get over
and like I said, you'll be showing them much more love by controlling what they eat. So, here's one big thing that's both has health consequences as well as financial, is eating out. We sometimes think, that it doesn't make a big difference, but it does. And it really doesn't matter where you eat. It's just a matter of how unhealthy it is. If you go out to eat, it's never going to be as healthy as you eating at home. Mhm. Now, granted, we all want to go out to eat because it's, an experience, it's enjoyment. But you need to know that most of the time, if you can go to a decent restaurant, the food is going to have more salt, more oil, and more likely more sugar, depending on what you're eating.
Hmm.
You don't have any control on how it's cooked. You don't even see how it's being cooked. Um, you can go to a really, really expensive restaurant and maybe you can pick out the choice, the selection of meat. But overall, it's not going to be as healthy as what you may be able to cook at home.
That's right.
And it's going to be more expensive. There are times where we just did a high level calculation between, what it would cost to feed a couple people at McDonald's versus feeding a couple people by buying a rotisserie chicken from a supermarket. Now, rotisserie chicken, again, depending on ranges of health, is not ideal health, but it's healthier than fast food. If there's anything I would suggest to anyone in the audience is fast food is one of the things you want to eliminate now. Or as we used to say, there's only two times, now and right now. Mhm. There's nothing healthy at all. Even the healthy dishes are unhealthy. So you really want to cut them out.
You want to invoke your power of now.
Yes.
Now.
Yes.
Okay. Because there's nothing healthy about eating a meal at McDonald's.
No.
Okay. The restaurants that you select, the fast food restaurants, and like Coach was saying, there is nothing that's going to substitute a healthy meal or a better choice than preparing your foods at home. But fast food restaurants versus going to a sit down restaurant where you have more options, if you must eat out, then those restaurants that you go and have a sit down are the better of the two.
Yes. Again, execute or leverage your power, of now in the moment, so that you make better choices. Now, here's something else that sometimes people will ask or wonder about what foods am I actually buying if I'm on a budget? And I'm just going over some foods you probably want, to keep in terms of like your produce. You might want to buy your apples and bananas and leafy green vegetables fresh, and maybe even your carrots. You can buy frozen veggies, veggie blends. So when your supermarket ever has a sale, where you get 99 cents a bag of frozen vegetables for 99 cents or $1, buy as many as you can. You can buy your berries frozen too. And here's something just want to clarify, because quite often used to believe that fresh produce was always the healthiest. And it's actually not true. And the reason is that the fresh produce may have between on its transport time, on the truck, between where it was grown and by the time it hits your supermarket and by the time you actually buy it, fresh produce tends to lose its nutrition as it ages. Well, what they do with frozen is quite often the frozen vegetables, I think called flash freeze or something
Flash
like
freezing.
that. Yeah, they're able to, freeze it right away, which then retains most of the nutrients. So,
and that's produce like your leafy vegetables, your cabbages, your collards, your kale, those types of vegetables.
Yeah. And like I said, your veggie blends, because they'll last up in the refrigerator. I don't think they'll last forever, but you get a little bit more shelf life than if you buy everything fresh and you're not consuming it. Just another tip, as Coach Mitchell alluded to, if you shop your refrigerator, when you see your vegetables starting to, on that last leg, use them for your broth, use them for your smoothies.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I just want to interject while we're on shopping for fruits and vegetables. I was reading an article, we were led to believe that the wax on an apple
Mhm.
or, your fruits was bad for you,
Mhm.
because it was laden with pesticides. Contrary to that, the article was indicating that foods that are waxed, when they harvest, we'll stick with the apples because that's one of the fruits that we know comes with, a wax coating. The fruits have to be washed as soon as they're picked and taken back to the processing facility. So any pesticides and dirt and debris that's on that fruit is washed off and then coated with wax. And the wax that they use is either beeswax or cassava wax. It's not
Like the wax we think.
like the wax that we think is, poisonous or harmful to ingesting. It's actually not bad as some reports have indicated. But if you still must wash it, running it underwater is not going to eliminate or remove the wax, but you would have to actually go through a process using some baking soda or vinegar or dipping it in boiling water for a couple of seconds and then, washing the wax off. But I just wanted to put that out there that if you're buying, if you shy away from buying apples or foods that may have a wax coating, you may want to rethink that because it's not as detrimental and laden with pesticides as we may have been led to believe in the past. So,
and that kind of brings up another point because often asked, well, do I need to buy organic? Well, if you're on a budget, you probably cannot because granted, organic costs more. Now, I just find this interesting. I always got to bring this up. It's interesting that we label food grown the way it's supposed to be grown, but don't label the food that's laden with all the pesticides and chemicals. So we got to make a distinction about, and it's like the same thing with healthcare. We call the original healthcare alternative. And this new healthcare by plugging people with pharmaceuticals, well, that's the norm. So again, understand how the language. So if it's not in your budget, you don't have to buy organic. There are certain things that you can do to help remove. And again, not every food needs to be purchased organically anyway.
right.
Things like bananas, anything with a thick skin, really shouldn't buy organic because it's a waste of money. But if you do buy things that may have a thin skin and you're concerned about it, yes, there are homemade solutions that that you can basically reduce the amount of pesticides. So again, just want to go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you have any other points as we come to the top of the hour?
Yes, just want to get through these. Again, things you might want to keep, in your refrigerator or your pantry is, as I mentioned, your frozen veggies, veggie blends, berries, cans. You can buy stuff that's in the can, but you want to be mindful of, you want things that are no or low sodium, no added sugar, especially when it comes to fruit in the can. And if it does have sodium, rinse it before you consume it to reduce some of the salt. For your whole grains, you want to make sure you have oats, maybe whole grain pastas, breads, brown rice. You want, sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, root vegetables. I know regular potatoes sometimes get a bad rap that they're not healthy. The potato is fine. It's what people put on their potatoes that tend to push them over into the unhealthy category.
Again, it comes down to the choices that we make.
Yes, and always, root vegetables are always fine. Again, you want to eat as healthy as your budget allows. And if for protein, if you're okay with things like eggs, you make sure you have your eggs. You got your canned fish such as tuna, salmon, sardines. You can even go low fat dairy. I don't particularly, personally, not a big fan of, you know, dairy products, and not everybody can consume dairy products. So,
Right.
one thing I am big on is make sure you have dry beans, legumes, and nuts. Mhm.
Love them.
Yep, a bag of beans cost you, a good sized bag may cost you a couple dollars. And you could get a couple meals out. You could even make, your burgers. Mhm. I know some people are like, oh, burgers, yeah. You can make black bean burgers. And when done right, they're delicious. And the last tip is start growing your own. It's not expensive to get started. Doesn't take a whole lot of knowledge to get started. You can just throw some seeds, like Jack and the Beanstalk. Throw some seeds in the pot and just watch it grow. Now, if you want, you can get a little bit more sophisticated, with a little bit more knowledge. But just to get started, take some seeds from you buy a pepper, take some seeds, those seeds from the pepper, put them in some soil, and just watch it grow.
Yep. And sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No.
Nope. I was going to say, if are you done with
Yes.
those choices? And I just want to bring it full circle back to food insecurities, food deserts, and the food choices that we make. If you have a food insecurity, there are organizations, there are programs, or your church. Do not go without food. Reach out to someone, reach out to your church, tell someone. If you have the means in making sure that others eat, donate to your local food banks, donate to your local religious organization, even solicit individuals on your community Facebook page from wherever you may reside, and have them DM you if they're in need. One of the things that we can do to help ensure that we close the gap on food insecurities and or access to foods is put ourselves out there as a source of assistance. Some months during the year, I put out on Facebook the first 5 families that DM me get a supermarket card. My church, Micah 7 Ministries, we do not allow anyone to go hungry. And, we admonish the congregation, if you are in need and do not ask, that is shame on you, because we are there to support our community and our brothers and sisters. So if it's something that you can do it. That's the bottom line.
Yes. So when you pick up those sale items, if you can swing it, pick up a few extra.
Right.
Maybe store them, and then when you get enough, donate them.
Right. And there are communities now that have little food huts where you can go and drop off, fill it with canned foods or non-perishable items. And individuals who may be ashamed that they have to ask or that they're in need, yes, which is a shame that, people have been shamed and embarrassed when they have a need, but they have food huts, and you can go and put donate non-perishable foods there. So individuals can come by. It's those community food huts. As a matter of fact, I saw one the other day during my travels to work. But if you can donate, do so.
Yes. And just want to say one more thing. If you feel uncomfortable about asking, just kind of know this, that you're probably not asking because of your ego. And it's no judgment on you. where pretty much everybody's like that. But just remember this, going a different direction here. A bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul. I'm saying that a bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul, because our ego keeps us detached. And by you asking, you're giving somebody else the opportunity to give. Sounds kind of, weird, but there's somebody waiting to give, and you actually can make their day.
That's right. And you'd be surprised the assistance that, people are willing to give when you do just ask.
Mm-hmm.
When you simply ask. And, like Coach Darren said, let the ego go,
Mm-hmm.
because the ego will prevent you from accomplishing so many things.
Mm-hmm.
So many things. So I think that's a good note to end
Yes.
on.
Mm-hmm.
If you're
I'm done.
all right. Listen, guys, we just want to say how much we appreciate you dropping in and spending a little bit of time with us tonight. We don't come on the Power of Now with our live discussions to pump you up. We come to bring you real life issues and hopefully real life solutions to some of the issues that are present in society that impact all of us. Some nights you may get a motivating and encouraging word, but we really want to bring the issues of what's plaguing society here to discuss, to come together with like minds, common minds, to find solutions that will impact the greater good.
Yes.
I'm Coach Mitchell.
And I'm Coach Darren.
We want to thank you for joining us for the Power of Now. We'll see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m.
Good night.
Have a